Hello and welcome to the ESL Teaching Podcast. I'm your host, Yeva Grossless, otherwise known as simply Yeva, and I am so thankful that you tuned in. I'm looking forward to sharing both my knowledge and experience on this podcast, as well as that of my fellow teachers. Hi, Laura.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy you agreed to come on. And for those of you who don't know, I'm going to do a short introduction of Laura, but we go a few years back, and Laura's a dear friend of mine and a dear business bestie as well. So I'm very, very happy to have you on.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here, and we're just going to have a great conversation, and we'll see where it takes us.
Absolutely. All right. So for all of you who don't know Laura, I wanted to give a short introduction. So Laura Kebart serves super busy middle school English language arts teachers who actively choose family time over prepping for class. Through her website, lesson plan resources, online trainings, and annual virtual conferences, she helps teachers go home earlier each day so they can teach with confidence and enjoy life outside the classroom. Amen. Learn more at her website, languageartsteachers.com, and at her summit website, mselasummit.com. So I will link those websites underneath this podcast and underneath this video, and you can check them out anytime you want. So I guess now that we got the introductions out of the way, let's dive right in. And today we're talking about test prep strategies. It's a testing season. It's getting in full swing. For ELL World in New Hampshire, we start the annual testing February 1st. Other states with English learners have already started. So the testing window is different. And then we have all of the other state and federal testing that comes in, March, April, May, we teach for half a year, and then the rest of the year, we're like, oh my gosh, how do we get this? How do we get the kids through the test? So before we dive into all these questions, I did want to ask, I asked several questions that are the same for all of my guests. So the first one is, tell us a little bit of your backstory. How did you decide to become a teacher?
Yeah, I've always loved school. I really, really have. And so I think I articulated the fact that I wanted to be a teacher for the first time as a second grader. I remember very clearly where I was standing in the classroom, what my teacher was doing. And I remember telling her, I want to be a teacher. And her response was, oh, no, you don't want to do that. And at the time, I don't know. I was confused, whatever, didn't think too much about it. I now know what she means. But we all have those days as teachers. But yeah, no, that's definitely what I wanted to do. And I love the school environment. Even as a little kid, I love the school environment. Doesn't mean that every day was perfect. Doesn't mean I, never had issues. Doesn't mean there weren't days I didn't want to go to school.
Yeah.
But I love that environment. I love reading and writing. And then, as I was older in high school, I remember I became kind of that person, that go-to for when other kids needed help with their writing, or they needed help with their, understanding of, some book that we had just read. And so that's where I really felt like, oh my gosh, I can actually help people. This is something I'm good at. I can help other people. And I didn't realize that until, really probably that high school moment. And on the flip side of that, I also knew what it was like to be a student and to need help, because I really, really struggled with math. I was the senior in high school taking like a freshman, sophomore, algebra class, like
oh my
trying
God.
to catch up.
Yeah.
So, I know I learned that around that age and that time period, what it was like to be really good at something and to be able to help somebody with it. And I also knew what it was like to struggle with something and to have to reach out. And so I think those two qualities really solidified for me, like, yeah, I'm definitely going to be a teacher, and can't wait to do this. And here we are 20 something years later. So yeah,
that's very nice. It's like, I'm glad you actually, like, you knew that you were going to be a teacher. As I was listening to your story, I'm like, yeah, people would come to me for like English homework or like, Lithuanian homework and everything, and math. Oh my gosh. I think like any of like math calculations, and I keep telling that one of my other dreams, to help other people was to be a doctor. But I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to risk it, because what if my formulas don't match? So I don't want
Right.
I want to help you. I don't want to kill you. So yes. So
Right. Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah, if not that I would ever want to like have a do-over or anything. I have no regrets, but another path my life could have taken, I probably would have gone into maybe like physical therapy, but again, a teaching role, something to where you're using your skills and you're working with people and meeting them where they are, and essentially improving the quality of life for them. And I just chose to do that through the teaching of reading and writing in English.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting to kind of think of, the other paths in life that you might have taken.
Absolutely.
But I think it all relates back to teaching in some capacity for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Now, what grade levels do you work with, or did you work with? And did you have English learners in your English language arts classes? And if so, how did you navigate that? That's like, 3 questions in one. So feel free to take it from whichever angle you want.
Okay, sure. Over the course of 17 years in the classroom as a teacher, I cannot think of any class, any year, any grade level where I didn't have English language learners in my classroom. It's always been part of just, the classroom teaching experience. And so to kind of roll all those questions into one, yeah, I've taught both high school and middle school English. I actually started my teaching career at the high school level with English. I taught all the various grade levels over about a 9-year period of time, so 9th grade through 12th grade. I then transitioned to 6th grade. And so I taught middle school for the next 6 years, those grade levels, followed by a couple years as an instructional coach. And so all along the way, I had English learners in my classrooms, like through all those experiences. And so the way that I navigated that is that I, first of all, had to find ways to connect with them each individually, whatever that looked like, whether it was, talking about shared experiences or just a lot of the typical things that we do when we take a moment to actually get to know each student in our classroom. So same thing for English learners, is getting to know them individually, making sure that they knew they were in the right place with me. Like, yes, you are in the right place. This is exactly where you're supposed to be. Because I myself have not been, I don't know what it's like to be an English language learner, but I can imagine, to put on the sympathy, empathy hat and to walk in someone else's shoes. I can only imagine what it must feel like to walk into a classroom and to have no idea what's going on, and how comforting it might feel for a teacher to basically convey to me that, hey, you're in the right spot. This is the place for you. Yeah. And so, and I know from our experiences in the past, from having had many conversations over the years, you and I know that you know what it's like to be an English language learner. And so just, I would think to have someone say, hey, you're in the right spot. This is just the place for you. Absolutely. You are in the right place today. I'm glad that you're here. But meeting them in that level, and then making sure that they always feel welcome in your classroom. And besides that, the other way that I have been able to navigate reaching and connecting with my English learners in my classroom is really leaning on the expertise of, our various campus ELL, ESL specialists. And then, usually the schools that I've been in have had, 1 or 2 specialists for the entire campus. I know there are some schools that don't even have a specialist on campus. But all that being said, I also really dove into, doing my own research and conducting my own learning about how to reach students who are English learners. And so it's just been a years and years long process. It's an ongoing process. So that's how I've navigated that, and made mistakes along the way, and tried things and learned things and implemented those things. And that's what it is. I mean, that's so much of what teaching is in general. So that's my experience. That's how I've navigated those waters.
I think you touched upon, a very important thing, because it is, reiterating that you are here, you're welcome. I mean, we're going to do what we can is priceless, because I have some, my goal is for students to have a safe place to come and, like to kind of like, okay, I don't know how to do this, like, can you help me? But when a classroom teacher can help them, that's even better because the connection, the students make all these connections throughout the school year with the teachers, and to have that connection with all of the other teachers is priceless. I literally heard a conversation this, and it wasn't about like English learners or anything, but I was walking back from the office to my room or something, I can't remember, and like, and there's this kid walking by a classroom, and he's like, hello, Mr. So-and-so, and he's like, hey, how you doing? Everything's good. And they're shooting back and forth. So the teacher's in the classroom at the desk, and the kid is in the hallway, because, neither of them intended, to even have like a longer conversation. And it's like back and forth, and all right, bud, have a good day. All right, bud, all right, Mr. So-and-so, I love you too. Bye. Like, it's so sweet, but the kids, they feel who they can rely on and who they can be with, who can, like, who's got their back. So I think that is super important.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's something that we can do that doesn't take any prep time. It doesn't take any like all those things that we spend our time on as teachers. Okay, what like the example that you just gave, Yeva, like that is not something that takes any time or energy. It just takes a little bit of effort and kind of thinking and looking for those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, we're talking about test prep strategies. Nobody likes to teach to the test. However, it's part of our reality, and let's see what we can do. So when do you start preparing your students for the testing?
Okay. So first of all, yes, to touch on that point that, we don't like to admit that we teach to the test, but actually we do. I've, the last couple of schools I've been in, we've had some kind of benchmark or curriculum assessment every 6 weeks. Like every 6 weeks. So it's not just, oh, the test is in March, the test is in April. It's like, nope, we've got a benchmark coming up at the end of September and we just started school. And so, literally I start pretty much from day one of the school year, quote, teaching to the test, but I say that with a caveat. And the caveat is that my students are not even aware that what we're doing is test prep. Now, I know it is because I'm very intentional and very strategic, but they don't know that it's test prep. And so here's what it looks like. It's not like, oh, day one, day two of the school year, we're doing practice tests and we're doing nonstop worksheets. It's not that at all, right? We don't want to burn out our students by week 3. But what I mean is that even from day one, I'm very intentional and conscientious about how I ask questions, what terms I'm using, what academic vocabulary I'm working into the teachable moments in the conversations, very intentional about what types of concepts I'm teaching in depth and which ones I'm just glossing over. And so I'm very, very particular and intentional about what I'm asking my students, the vocabulary, the language, the terminology that I'm using. They don't realize it's test prep, but actually it is because of the way that I'm phrasing my questions when we're just having a discussion. So it's test prep that doesn't actually look or feel like traditional test prep, if that answers that part of the question.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I was thinking about that too, because I have a couple of newcomers who speak very little English. So I whatever assignments we do, I always have like the words either on the board or on the wall or everything. And then, one of the days I was like thinking, so, we have all of these, like provide word banks and sentence frames and stems, right? To help your English learners, right? Do they even know what that is? Or like, if I like make a list, do they even know? Because in our testing, they are asked to make a list, choose the answer, right? Like simple wording like that. So I go over just the simple instructions and I give instructions in that way, again, sounds like the same test prep, right? But we're not, I'm introducing like a new concept of like a word bank. This is a word bank and this is how you can use it. Or like, this is a sentence frame. That's what it is. This is how you can use it. But because recently, I think I keep telling, like, I work with other teachers and everything. And I said, like, use word banks, but I'm like, do they even know what those word banks are for? So
yeah, something as simple and as basic as that foundational level. Because imagine if, student, like how long could a student get by in the year before they actually really know what a word bank is, like what it's for? We take for granted that, oh, it's a word bank, it helps you do XYZ, but students are very smart and very, very good at moving along, and us think that they've got it, and then you start to see gaps develop way later on. Like, we just can't assume anything, really. And I think that's what you're talking about, right? Like,
absolutely. And I totally love that you are, strategic vocabulary, strategic formation of questions, strategic ways of doing it. And absolutely. Now, what about the strategies? Do you have any favorite test prep strategies?
Yeah. It's overwhelming to think of everything that we need to do with our students and everything that they have to know. It's a lot that we put on our shoulders. But when it really comes down to is, if all I do as a teacher is focus on academic vocabulary, focus on how to make logical inferences using text evidence, and focus on helping my students understand what rigorous questions are asking. If I can only do those three things, those three strategies, academic vocabulary, making logical inferences, and understanding what those rigorous questions are asking, if all I do is those three things, we're good. We're going to move the needle. And so when it comes to test prep strategies, I know in a second we could talk about like more specific activities for those strategies, but really, that's my strategy as a teacher. So I don't drown myself in, okay, they need to know RL 8.2 and RL 8.3 and you know what I mean? Like all the little standards, because that's overwhelming. What I do is I take a big step back and I think, okay, academic vocabulary, logical inferences, understanding what those questions are actually asking. If I can just focus on those three things, if I can focus on strategies to meet the needs of those three things, we're good. It's like those are three big umbrellas under which everything else comes. So a lot of problems and a lot of overwhelm is avoided when we just focus on those three strategies, those three test prep strategies: academic vocabulary, logical inferences, and understanding what those questions are actually asking.
Absolutely. And that is for all students, all grade levels. And it's like everybody needs it all the time, because even when doing assignments, I hear every day, reading a question like, what is this question asking you? What do you mean? It's like, what do you mean? What is it asking me? So I think just knowing the words that go into the question and just what the question is asking, huge. Very simple, again, don't need to overwork yourself, don't need to, go into great detail, but this is perfect.
And that's why I can say, like, I start, quote, test prep day one of the school year. That's what I mean. It means that I'm using the academic vocabulary that my students are going to encounter all year long. And yes, on those tests, I'm already using it day one. Not just making inferences, because students can infer all day long. I'm talking about making logical inferences, but we're doing that from day one. Even with just like a first day of school, mentor text, we're making logical inferences right there. And then, exactly what you said, understanding what those questions are really asking. It is heartbreaking when a student has read the passage, they understand it, you've had conversations with the student, they understand it, and then the question, like the multiple choice questions come, and the student's like, I don't get what it's asking. Like, I know what the reading has, I know that you can analyze, I know that you've got it, but oh my gosh, to miss a question just because you didn't understand it, what it was actually asking you to do, that's huge. And so that's why I had to bring up that one too, like understanding what the questions are really, really asking.
I'm going to be, like, to be fair, some of the questions, whether it's in a test or on a worksheet, are ridiculous because you
like,
can
actually talks like that.
exactly, like you can actually ask a decent question without, the longest way using 20,000 words that nobody uses except in, that particular subject area on that particular day in the textbook. I don't know, but yeah. This is what we have to deal with though. So.
Yeah, words like portray and convey and
yeah,
those are easy words to, not easy words, but I'm saying it's easy for students to become very confused by those words. And so I try to be very intentional with using the word portray or convey, like even from day one. I just try to work it into regular conversation because I just don't want a student to miss a question only because they didn't understand what was being asked, so.
So speaking of, so we have the big three umbrellas, right? And so what are the students' favorite activities, to kind of like work with that, vocabulary or inferencing and so on?
Yeah. I have a lot of activities that my students enjoy. And I actually have a whole entire free training, like free virtual training, where I go into all kinds of detail and I show pictures and images of all this stuff I'm about to go into. But yeah, I can definitely talk about some of the popular activities that they're test prep activities, but they don't feel like test prep.
Yeah.
And I think that's key. So one of the things I like to do is I like to have fun with sentence stems or question stems. I think you mentioned that earlier too, but I'll take like paper cubes. You can Google cube template online. You'll get like the cutout of a paper cube. And no, middle school students are not too old for this. Nope. But I'll take the cube and I'll type or write, a different sentence stem on each side of the cube. And then they're rolling the cubes. They're rolling these paper cubes. Basketball, I'll take one of the inflatable basketballs or beach balls and I'll write a question stem on each one, and we're throwing it around the room, and whatever your right thumb lands on, that's the question that you're reading aloud, and then somebody else in the classroom has to paraphrase what the sentence stem or question stem is, right? Like, do we even understand what it's asking, first of all? And so we have fun with sentence stems. Sometimes I'll put like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up on my overhead, my projection board. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 have 6 different sentence stems or question stems. And then students are literally, they're rolling dice in their groups at their tables. And so anything I can do to bring some interaction and some hands-on experiences coupled with students reading and speaking and listening, all around those sentence stems, because it's hands-on in some way, whether it's a cube, a basketball, or a beach ball, the dice, that's the hands-on component. They're seeing the question or sentence stem, whether it's written on the beach ball or the basketball, whether it's projected on my board, and then they're having to read it out loud to their small group or their partner, and then they're having to discuss and write. Like, we're just trying to bring in all the components. Think of the 5 senses. Can't really do anything with taste, but I can definitely help the kids see and hear and all the things.
Also
try
touch,
to make it,
you know what I mean? Touch and move, all this. Yeah,
the kinesthetic component. Yeah, definitely. So that's one strategy. Another strategy, okay, this is fun. Go ahead and give your kids a practice test, all right? But you're going to tell them this is where you get them. After the moaning, groaning, oh, we're doing a practice test. No, we're not doing a practice test. I, as a teacher, I already took the test. And maybe you did take the test, only you went through and you just randomly circled answer choices, right? Like, if you just randomly circle answer choices without even looking at it, aren't you probably going to get at least 10 or 20% correct, like by accident? So I give those to my students. I say, I already took the test. I just want you to score me. We get to grade you? Oh, where's the answer key? Oh, I lost it. I lost the answer key. I don't have it. Well, how are we going to know? I don't know. You'll have to read the passage and see if you got the right answer. And so that's just a fun way to get them to read the passage, read the questions, read my answer choice, and then, of course, prove through the best text evidence possible, prove whether I'm correct or incorrect. So that's a fun way to just get your kids to look at, these passages and these questions in a different way. You can't get away with doing that every week, but you can definitely do it twice in the year and have some fun with it.
They love being teachers. It's like, oh, we get to grade you now. All right, just wait and see.
Yeah, it is. It's fun. It's just something a little bit different. But yeah, like I said, you can get away with that once or maybe twice in the school year. Another one that's really fun is what I call 2 lies and a truth. Because here's the deal. Students, when you give students anything with multiple choice, typically it's 4 multiple choice questions, right? Well, there's usually one that's pretty easy to rule out. Like there's that one that everybody can pretty much rule out. Most of your kids are going to rule out. And then you've got 3 left, right? That's where 2 truths and a lie come in, because that's where things can get tricky for students. I've had students tell me that they feel like they're being tricked on some of these multiple questions, like, right? And they're not being tricked, but I understand why they say they think they are. They say they feel that way. I get it. Because you can definitely rule out one, and then you can pretty much rule out another if you really think about it. And then you are down to 2. And so I call it 2 truths and a lie, because I'll give my students, the multiple choice, practice. And I will go ahead, usually with the class, I'll go ahead and help guide them through, okay, what's the one that we can definitely get rid of? Yeah. Okay, good. Now you're down to 3. Okay, 2 truths and a lie. Which 2 answer choices, or 2 lies and a truth? Sorry, I said it backwards. 2 lies and a truth. Which 2 of the remaining answer choices are the lies? And which one's the truth? The truth is the correct one. So it's just a different way to shift that conversation from, okay, we're going to do a practice passage today. There you go. You shift from that perspective, which is kind of boring and tedious and monotonous, to 2 lies and a truth. Yeah. And so just giving your students a different way to think about it. So that's fun that you can do once in a while. Something else that is helpful and that is hands-on is, take a practice test you have, right? Transfer the questions, the ones that work really well for open-ended questions, transfer those into a chart that you can cut up like task cards. And then give those task cards to your students. They're the exact same questions that are from the test, but there's something psychological that happens when a student has a selection of task cards and they're just pulling one card at a time, and they're looking at that one question in isolation. That's the only one they're working on. Yes, all the other task cards are right there on their desk. Maybe they're in a small group, but there's something interesting that happens. The quality of work goes through the roof when they're only looking at one question at a time versus an entire sheet full of questions. Maybe someone out there has some research on it. I don't know. This is just from personal observation over years and years.
Overwhelming. I just I look at those, I just had my students, they had a social studies, a guide, study guide, fill in the study guide. First of all, my students frequently don't even know where to look for information. So it's it's a lot of stuff is, and there are a lot of other students too. So I said, notes, Google Classroom, I'm not with them the entire day. So we spent a good chunk a chunk of time just organizing ourselves, trying to figure out where to get that information. But then, but it's like a long, you write the definition or list these things or answer these questions. And it's having it. This is a great idea. I'm actually going to bring it next week. I'm going to see if I can try it out. Yeah. So this is
it's just a different way to look at test prep, to where it doesn't have to always feel like test prep. Let's see, I know I've got other strategies. Oh, something else that I like to do, and we touched on this before, but again, paraphrasing the question. I learned this years ago when I was working with a small group of students that were, really, really struggling. And it was amazing to me. I kind of just stumbled on this by accident, but we spent time I thought, I'm going to go over the questions with them first, and then we're going to actually answer the questions. We never even got to answer the questions because I only had 30 minutes with this group of students, and we spent the entire 30 minutes just paraphrasing the question. We didn't read the passage, we didn't answer the questions, but it was 30 minutes just paraphrasing the question. because they weren't understanding what the questions were asking. And so that right there is a test prep strategy. That's an activity that doesn't involve actually taking a test, right? Again, we don't want to burn students out too soon with test taking, but just spending time paraphrasing the question, and that can be really that's a fun thing to do in the classroom too, is, giving them what looks like a test. And of course, I don't want to take a test today. This is a practice test. This is for a grade. And it's like, you know what? We're not reading the passage and we're not answering the questions either. Well, you got their attention right there. Like, wait, what? What are we doing with it? Like, we're just paraphrasing the question. That's all we're doing. And they're being assessed on, can they convey to you what the question's just asking them? This is a really good, if you're into doing centers and stations and small group work, this is a really, really good activity to do at your teacher station. Like, when you sit down as a teacher and you've got 4 or 5 kids coming over that you're going to, support or provide intervention to or whatever, grab a practice test or just, whatever classroom subject you're supporting, and just look at the way questions are asked and just go over that with your students. Paraphrase the question, have them read it aloud and have them paraphrase in their own words basically what it is the question's asking. That's a whole conversation right there. It is eye-opening. Yeah. So that's something else that I really like to do that falls under the test prep activities, but that doesn't involve just taking tests.
I absolutely love all of these ideas, and I already check mark. I'm making a list of what I'm doing next week. We have a teacher workshop tomorrow, so I don't have to do any of that. But this is amazing. Now, I asked the last question also. This is the same for all teachers, and because I want to know, in your opinion, how can all teachers set up their classrooms for success?
That's a tough question, because I think success can look different for each classroom teacher. So first of all, I think you have to decide what success means for you in your classroom. And this is deeper than, well, success means all my students pass the state test at the end of the year. Okay, there are different types of success. So first of all, decide on what success means to you. If you try to copy or imitate, that amazing teacher down the hall who has her own strategy and seems to have all the ducks in a row, that may not work for you. So you have to work within the parameters of, your own personality as a teacher, the dynamics of your students, things like that. So figure out what success means to you. Does that mean that you get to teach every day without constant interruptions from students? Does that mean that your students are engaged? What does success mean to you on a daily basis? Do you walk out of the building every day with energy to take home to your family, with energy to go home and work out? What does success look like to you? So first of all, decide what that's going to mean to you. And then next, I say, stick to a routine. Figure out what it is that needs to happen in your classroom each day to make things easy for you and easy for your students. So an example for me is I'm really, really big on bell ringers. I know some people call them warm-ups or do-nows, but that's just how I start each and every classroom. We have, anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes for the bell ringer. And it's just a prompt, a question, something that's posted on the board. When students walk in, that is what they're working on. There are no questions during that time. There's a timer going, so students know how much time until we officially start class. But, there are no questions. There's no, can you sign this? Or where do I put this? Or where do I turn this in? Or what do I do? Can I go to the bathroom? There are no questions. It's kind of a sacred time. It's time for me as a teacher to take a sip of water, take a deep breath, look over my agenda one more time, because maybe what I taught last block is not what I'm teaching this block, because maybe it's a different grade level. And then for the students, it's time to, okay, where's my pen? Oh, wait, my Chromebook, I need to plug it in real quick. Or, it's just time for all of us in the classroom to get our thoughts together, and it sets the tone for the entire class period. So for me, that's my routine. Everything else that happens during the rest of class may or may not be the same as the day before, but
yes,
when our class, that part is the same. So stick to a routine for success. And then finally, give yourself the gift of something consistent that you can count on each week. Like, choose one day of the week where the same type of activity happens every single time. So for me, I love to start every Monday with a nonfiction passage. I have a whole year's worth of nonfiction passages that I wrote myself. And, they come with four open-ended standards-based questions. That is what I do every single Monday. And the reason I chose Monday is because I found myself stressed out on Fridays, like exhausted. It's the end of the week. I want to go home, but I at least need to get stuff done for Monday or Sunday night. Oh, what are we doing again tomorrow? I can't remember. What are we doing? What did we do Friday? What are we doing tomorrow? And so as an English teacher, I love the fiction and the short stories and the novels. And I found myself a little bit weaker on the nonfiction side of things. I know that most standardized tests are like 60% nonfiction. And so, that was a way that I solved that problem. I solved the problem of, oh my gosh, what am I doing in class on Monday? I just want to go home. It's Friday afternoon. I don't want to stay any later. And okay, when was the last time we did nonfiction? And so I solved both problems by creating a whole year's worth of nonfiction passages with standards-based questions. And now every single Monday, that's what happens. So I never walk into the building on Monday wondering, wait, what am I doing again today? What did we do on Friday? There's nothing to plan. It's always the same. And then that's just 4 more days of the week, to plan for. But just, do yourself a favor. Figure out what is your one thing you're going to do. Maybe for you, it's every Friday. Maybe it's every Tuesday, whatever the day is. But give yourself kind of that mental break from having to constantly invent or reinvent what is happening in class. And so those are 3 things, I guess. I know you only asked for one, but those are really 3 things.
This is so important, though. You touched about on some important stuff. So, these 3 things make one classroom successful, right?
And that's what makes my classroom successful, and that's what makes me as a teacher feel successful too.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I love these ideas. Thank you so much for sharing them. Now, do you have any final thoughts to add, final ideas? I know that you mentioned your test prep strategies free training. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So it's a free training. I also offer an hour continuing education certificate, so you have a record of your time. But yeah, we go into more, and it's very visual too, but we go into more strategies that I didn't even have time to talk about here. But what it is really is it gives you, the teacher, tools to use all year long so that you actually are reviewing and prepping your kids for the testing without burning them out, without them ever really even knowing that they're preparing for testing. So it's, I teach about what that actually looks like. I do a screen share. I show what that looks like. I also provide ideas for resources, like, okay, test prep, where do we find all these resources? And when we do find them, what do we do with them? So I go into that aspect of things. And then I also talk a lot about how to actually engage your students, because student engagement is always, it's always a challenge. And so those are really the 3 components of the free training. And I have, several resources that I give away on that training as well. So,
that's awesome.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that is really awesome. And I did attend it, and it was really, really nice. So I'm going to link your free webinar, your free test prep webinar underneath in the show notes and underneath the video. And where can people find you? Can you repeat that to the people? Maybe you want to do socials, maybe you want to do, what's the website again? And so that people can connect with you, because you are such a source of inspiration and such a source of great ideas, and support for other teachers.
Yeah, sure. Just come on over to languageartsteachers.com. We're actually undergoing a little bit of a website remake or redo, makeover, whatever. But I'm still accessible there. Come on over. You can, shoot me an email or a message. And I personally check my own emails, so it will go straight to me. And I'm happy to connect with you.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us, Laura. We truly appreciate that. And everyone, until next time, bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you loved what you heard today, be sure to do 2 things. First, make sure to subscribe to the ESL Teaching Podcast so you don't miss an episode. And second, leave a positive review wherever you listen, on iTunes, Spotify, or any other platform. Positive reviews will improve the chances of this podcast to be discovered in the feed and help our fellow ESL ELL teachers. And of course, there's a third thing. If you aren't following me on social media yet, come join me on Instagram at SimplyYevaESL, Facebook, Simply Yeva, or connect with me on my website, simplyyeva.com. Thanks again, and until next time.